Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad to have you with us. Tonight, we are going to be doing our second webinar in our professional learning series on access and equity. My name is Angie Schindelar, and I'm currently the president of ICTM. I would like to welcome everybody to check us out, follow us online through social media at Iowa Math Teach, and to also check out our website at iowamath.org to see all of the fun and interesting things that are going on with professional development to finish out this year and to go into next year. So let's go ahead and get started for tonight. I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. India White. She'll be our facilitator tonight. If you didn't have the opportunity to watch the webinar from the first session of our series, please let me know by email, and I'd be happy to send you that link. And we'll be sending you the link as well to tonight's. So Dr. White has a fabulous session as a TEDx speaker, and I've provided the link here that you can check that out. It's also in the material that I sent you. She's a national education consultant, has been a math teacher and a math coach, as well as an assistant principal. One of the biggest things that drives her passion and drives her work is to figure out and work on equitable practices in math classrooms to help bridge the achievement gap. So we are thrilled that what her passion is matching what we're trying to do as well. I wanted to share some pictures with you from our conference this weekend. We had the pleasure of having India on site with us and presenting. So those are just a couple fun pictures that she shared with us from her session. So you can see here that tonight we are on our second session around access and equity, and we're going to be talking about math identity tonight. So we've got our next session coming up on January 18th, and we still have to set the date for our spring session. But like I said, you're welcome to join us at any time, and we'll provide you with the links from previous sessions so you can stay caught up on everything. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce you to India, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that she can flip it over to her. So welcome, India.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Angie, and the team in Iowa. You guys are amazing. I had such a great time at the ICTM conference, and I'm so thrilled to be among you guys again today. And I think this is going to be a really great ongoing relationship that we have, an ongoing partnership where I really will come alongside you guys and help you deal with various things, whether it's equitable practices, closing the achievement gap, or just understanding your students. And that is my hope, is that you'll be able to really connect with students, no matter the demographic, no matter what they have going on. And so with that said, I'm super excited to talk with you guys today about math identity. And, I guess I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we can get started with that. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to pull up the presentation once I get a chance. We'll start from the beginning. And so today our session is called Math Identity, Can I Really Do Math? And I want to talk with you guys about this today because I want to first share a story with you about when I was in school. I know that you guys know that I am a math textbook author with Big Ideas Learning, National Geographic Learning, Cengage Learning. And I have the honor to create curriculum grades K-12. Never in a million years would I have thought that this opportunity would have landed in my lap as an at-risk student that I was, as a first-generation student, as an African-American student. And I can tell you that my experience growing up as a student was not that bright, to be honest. I had a lot of grit, did a lot of work, but believe it or not, I was that student that I would study for 3 hours in a math test just to get a 70%. And if I didn't study, I was going to fail it. There was a lot of anxiety there. My teachers couldn't always relate to me, and that was the hard part. It was they assumed a lot coming to the table. And my math identity was really low, especially when I was in calculus. Like, I didn't feel like I belonged in that class. It just felt like ugly. It just felt overwhelming. I just wanted to just get out of there. I wanted somebody to release me, to deliver me from this math that was tormenting me. And now I'm thankful because I get to put myself in student shoes and in educator shoes, and talk to you from the lens of a student, but also from the lens of a teacher, where, you know, I was able to have great success of pulling students from level 1s to level 5s on standardized assessments, and really able to coach teachers throughout the years of being an educator. And so I want to share some of these things with you. And so with that said, let's get started. So let's first talk about the data. Why do we even care about this, right? Well, first things first, according to the National Center of Education Statistics, 2 million students drop out of school every year. And I can tell you, math is one of their struggling points. I've had students tell me, hey, I've got everything but this math credit. And, you know, if I don't get it, I'm just going to go work for my parents, or I'm just going to go and, you know, find a job at McDonald's and just try to make it work. This is the reality of many students. Not only that, guys, we found that when the national report card came out and they pulled the data, they found 48 states did not have proficiency for fourth graders in 2022. 48 states. That's a problem. There was not a gain in 48 states. This was 2022 data. Then that NAEP data came out and they said that 22 out of 26 regions did not have proficiency for eighth graders in 2022. So in all of the participating areas that were affected by this data. You could go to the national report card yourself and look up these statistics. They also found that students are still significantly impacted by the COVID slide, and by a low math identity. And so this is what's really affecting us today. So what is math identity? It's when students, when they feel like they don't belong in your math class, and they feel like I can't accomplish this because of my shortcomings, my anxiety. I can't participate in math discourse. Not me. You know, I'm just a wallflower. Don't bother me. Okay. That's when a student has low math identity. But when they have a high math identity and they're successful at being a confident, solid student in your class, they feel like they belong in math and they feel like they can do math proficiently. And this is what we're after. And so some factors that contribute to this, you've got strong self-confidence, students that have grit, you know, students that have high self-esteem. Also, there's a strong sense of belonging for your students. You'll have students that have a great community and great family support. Now, I know some of you are probably like, okay, what about those last two, right? The students that don't have a great community or a great family support, how are you going to increase their math identity? Well, focus on the first 4 pillars of growing their self-confidence, growing their grit, growing high self-esteem, and growing a sense of belonging. And you might think, oh, well, you know, that's just too much for me to do. I'm here to let you know that you, as the teacher, you are the pivotal source of influence in a math class. Dr. John Hattie's research shows that a teacher is the #1 influencer of a student's success in a class. So if you're able to really cultivate a great relationship with students, and really convince them that they have what it takes, they will perform and even outperform for you. So remember that as you're looking at these elements and the factors that contribute to their math identity. So with that said, we are going to continue. We're going to hop over now, and we're going to talk about how to cultivate a strong math identity. There are certain things you want to do. So these are the 6 areas of focus that we're going to talk about in this webinar today. So how to cultivate a strong math identity. First, we're going to embrace a growth mindset. We'll continue to use praise and constructive feedback for students. We will eliminate shame in the classroom. We'll implement restorative practices. We'll also talk about differentiated instruction. And lastly, we will talk about enhancing student voice. These are the 6 areas of focus that we will talk about in this webinar today, but we're trying to build a strong math identity for your students. And I know that you guys understand the importance of this. I mean, their confidence is everything. And if we can first start with the growth mindset, you will see that you'll start to have significant change in academic achievement for your students. So let's get going. Tip #1, embracing a growth mindset. So when you are embracing this growth mindset with your students, the first thing I want to do is I want to encourage you to consider looking at Dr. Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset. She wrote a book on growth mindset. And a part of this is you're dealing with a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. So many students will come to class and say, I can't do this. I've tried this. I failed that test. Whatever. It's just not going to work for me. That's fixed mindset. And the way that you undo that is you've got to introduce them to growth mindset. This happens through different ways of communication. So when a student is in mathematical discourse and they're discouraged, what you can do is you can be proactive as a student and provide them with Bloom's taxonomy stems, math stems. Look it up. Bloom's taxonomy math stems that will help to undo the negative thought processes that they have going on. It will actually give them ways to think, give them ways to approach conversation with their peers whenever they are mingling with their students or with their peers in mathematical discourse. Not only that, I could talk about that forever. Dr. Angela Duckworth, she wrote a book on grit. I actually have it on my shelf, but I'm not gonna get it. And it's the passion and perseverance to obtain long-term goals. And in this book, this is one of those books that you'll pick up, and I don't think you'll be able to put it down until you're done, because it is powerful and it's really mind-changing. And she talks about how grit, that intrinsic motivation, that inner drive, is the number one factor for success of any group of people. I mean, Dr. Carol Dweck she interviewed students, she interviewed corporate leaders, she interviewed people that were like working out, everyone. And she found that grit was the key element of people's success. Grit is whenever, a student wants to give up and then they say, no, I'm going to push through for another 5 minutes, or I'm going to push through this last week. I'm going to get those assignments in. If you want to know what grit is, okay, you as an educator, you've assigned 10 assignments. You've got that student that only turned in 4, right? Their grade is a 66. And you tell them, you've got to get these in if you're trying to get a passing grade. What do? Those students will work their tail off and they will use grit and make up all those assignments so that they can get a passing grade in your class. And I think all of us have related to those type of students before. So grit is key. So you've got growth mindset, grit. Number 3, eliminating negative self-talk and embracing positive self-talk. There's a book I want to recommend, and it's called The Power of Speaking Positive. And the book is life-changing. And you'll have students that'll come and they'll blurt out 3 or 4 negative things. I would highly recommend that you get that book and figure out ways, strategies to help them to say positive things. I used to tell my students, you can't say anything negative about math. You can't say anything negative about, your performance or your ability. And whenever you have them on a positive track, this here takes work. It's going to take effort. Okay. No, it's not going to happen overnight, but you will start to see change. Okay. And when you reward a student for speaking positively and giving their best effort, being gritty, having a growth mindset, you'll start to see that they will begin to produce for you and they will excel proficiently in your class. Also, when you're eliminating negative self-talk and embracing positive self-talk, what comes with that? You can create I can statements. And I'm sure you've heard of this whenever you're creating your learning targets, your success criteria, your objectives for the day, and your agenda. You can create I can statements like, I can understand fractions today, or I can solve systems of equations by elimination. Whatever your class is, you can create I can statements for your students to help them be successful. I'm going to tell you this. They are going to need your help with this. Remember, for some of your students, this is a foreign world. Thinking positively, speaking positively, having grit, they're going to need you to cultivate that in them. So be encouraged in this process and don't expect it to happen in a week, right? You're going to have to check in with them. And I'm going to be honest, you're going to have to check in very strategically and with a lot of grit from you as the educator, where you're going to have to really go through and check for understanding, make sure that students are where they need to be. That's what you're going to have to do. Also, celebrating small victories with your students is key. If you see that they went from making a 65% to a 70% to a 72%, that is to be celebrated. Okay, every little change, because what you have to understand is some of these students, they feel like they are a victim of math class, right? And it's not your fault. They're a victim because of what they've been through in their math experience before they got to you. So celebrating small victories will help to shift. It'll create a paradigm shift where these students will feel like, okay, math class and my math teacher's not out to get me. They're actually here to advocate for me, to support me, to help me excel. Hence, building their math identity, making them feel like they can do math. Does that make sense? So take a moment and just kind of reflect on some of this, whether you're with a team or you're by yourself, and think of what are some things that you can do as a leader to embrace a growth mindset. All right. Feel free to pause, feel free to rewind, go back, whatever you need to do to get all that you need to from this session here. But thanks for letting me go over that with you. Now let's talk about tip number 2, guys. So tip number 2, whenever you are trying to build a math identity with your students, you want to use praise and constructive feedback. So I want to stress this part right here. Constructive feedback should be done with wisdom and not in a way that promotes shame or humiliation towards students. Let me give you an example. I was in calculus class, and as a senior in high school, I was an at-risk student. I was homeless at the time, and it just felt really awkward. I just really didn't feel like I belonged. Like I knew math, but I was just like, I really shouldn't be here, because everybody in my class was like, 2-parent home, very successful, like, and I was just like the oddball out, and everybody knew it. And I was the only African American, so it just got really weird. And I remember the teacher, he gave a quiz, and when he passed the quiz back, he said, I'm going to do a quiz review, and I'm going to start with problem 1 with everybody, and I'm going to go through the whole quiz. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. And I had missed problem number 1, right? Because I was struggling in calculus. And I remembered when he opened the test review and started going over problem 1, he said, now, if anybody in this class missed problem number 1, you're just stupid. And he turned and looked dead at me. The humiliation and the shame was out of this world. All my friends and the classmates all turned and looked at me. And I know I'm African American, but the blood was in my face, and it was like my face turned red. Like I felt like, oh my word, like I felt so embarrassed. And I just felt like running and darting out the door. And I tell you that because unfortunately, that was not the only time that teacher did that to me. I went through much humiliation that year, and I would not wish that on anyone. But my thing is, we as leaders, we have the power to keep our children and our students from experiencing any type of humiliation whenever we are giving constructive feedback. This does take some craftiness. Whenever you're going over things, being very careful of what we say, that when we're giving back feedback or advice, we're not like, well, John, you got a 38% on this quiz. And, like making sure that we're keeping things that would be harmful or shameful to them at bay and quieter, so that other students don't hear the poor performance of those learners. Or if a student says something incorrect, 5 times 6 is 32. Come on, it's not 32. No, it's not 32. Man, someone help him. Instead of doing that, working with the student and saying things such as, you're close. Let's think about it. Let's revisit that. Questioning the students. I had a really neat professor who talked about the power of questioning in the math classroom. Please, 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 please listen to this. Whenever you are giving constructive feedback, not only do you want to use wisdom, try to use questioning. So instead of just saying, no, the answer is 30. 5 times 6, the answer is 30. Next question. Make them kind of struggle productively for that answer, to where you can say, you're close. Let's think about it. How did you approach this problem? What are your thoughts when you're thinking of 5 times 6? Can you draw that out for me? And really taking the time with those learners so that they feel like there's a chance for them to try, a chance for them to get better at the math. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some things that you want to do. Another thing is, you'll see here at the bottom, I see a comment here in the chat. I'm thinking about having students write, yes, I can statements for the growth mindset goals. Excellent. And I like that too. Even when you are giving constructive feedback, you can also talk about, you can do this, say I can, and have those students to elaborate on what you are expecting them to be able to do in your class. Now, this is another thing I want to talk to you guys about. Whenever you're giving positive feedback, giving 3 positives in one area of focus for your students. So look at this example. So you're like, okay, India, what are you talking about? Listen, I noticed how you came to class on time. You took great notes and you participated in discussion. However, an area of focus will be for you to continue to complete your homework by the due date. And then how can I help you with that? Does that make sense? So these are ways that you can talk positively to your students so that when you do give constructive feedback, it's not so, gut wrenching, and it's not, tearing at them. Because some people feel like they're being brutally, stabbed in their math class because they already have a fear of math. They already have an anxiety. And then now you're coming at them to confirm and validate that they're not good at math. And so it's just a nightmare to sit through a math class for an hour. So in order to avoid that, you can do the 3 positives in one area of focus example here. So some questions I want you to think about, Angie, or whoever, feel free to put it in the chat. What are some ways that you've used praise and constructive feedback for your students? So again, what are some ways? And while we're answering this, I'll also look at the chat. What are some ways that you've used praise and constructive feedback for your students? I see a comment that says, I think student would be so surprised by a comment like that. They wouldn't be able to react negatively. Yes, you're really speaking with care and support. And that's the key. Speaking with care and support. And if we really realize that's why we're here, like, I know we love math. I know we love teaching. I know we graduated and we said we're going to change the world. But now, now that we're in the trenches, we've got to put our money where our mouth is, right? We've got to make it happen. And that's going to happen through more care and support, especially in this generation. This generation is very different from when we were in school, and sometimes it can be a little bit rough around the edges. So what are we going to do about it? We can't ignore it. We've got to learn to come alongside them and still help them be successful. And, some of my colleagues talked about using velvet gloves, being very careful with them. Right. And so what are some ways that, you can use praise and constructive feedback? Yes, I like this. So, the message is about building relationships is key. Students want to work hard when they trust you and they know you care. And that's the truth. Think about yourself. For example, when you sign into a hotel room or you're going to get your car worked on, the one thing that you love is what? Customer service, when they treat you like you matter. So for instance, I'll take a hotel room. Like, say you go to stay in Hilton, Marriott, or somewhere, Ritz-Carlton, you go to stay somewhere. And if the people at the front desk treat you like gold, you're probably, 1, going to go back. 2, you're going to enjoy your stay. And then you're going to tell people about it. But if you go there and it's cold, the customer service treats you like dirt, your room's not done, you don't get room service, they don't care about any complaints that you have, you're going to check out of there probably sooner than you thought you were. And you're going to just haul-tail. You're probably not going to go back. And then you're probably going to look up reviews on the website and give them a negative review because you're disappointed by the service, because they didn't care. There wasn't compassion. And students are the same way. Think of your classroom as a customer service situation in a math world. You are the salesperson, you're selling math, and you're doing it with care. You're doing it with confidence. But depending on the way you serviced and you served your students, that's going to reflect how they're going to perform in your class. And so that's why certain kids are like, I really like this class because the teacher's nice. Really? So you're telling me that they don't even care about the content? The first thing they say is, the teacher's nice. And I think that's the thing we've been missing, is we thought it was, listen, here's the math. I've got it down. I'm going to teach it to you. But we forgot that nice element. And therefore, the kids aren't really caring about the math because they feel like the teachers don't care about them. And I think that we now have the power to take that back and to make some changes. So let's look here. And so, yes, we are ambassadors of math. Yeah. Angie said, I never thought of about teaching compared to customer service. Yeah. And not only how they perform, but also how they feel about math. Yes, for most of their life. And it's so funny. I want you to just take a moment right now and think back on your math classes. Think of 2 math classes and your personal experience. What were they like? One that was the best class you could think of, or one was the worst class? What made the class awesome and what made the class horrible? Think right now. Think. I can tell you, you probably have the teacher somewhere in there, if you're honest, right? The teacher probably significantly impacted the way you felt about math. I like this. It says, Angie says, no kindergartner comes to math with a negative feeling about math, but by early grades, it shifts. Exactly. And it's all about how we communicate and how we make the children feel, especially in the younger grades. I mean, the 2 classes I think of, the worst class I had, I think ever was calculus because it was the teacher. I took calculus again in college and aced it. So the year before I was told I was stupid. The year later, I went to college, had an awesome teacher. She was amazing. I mean, we used to skip class to get to her class in college because she was that good. She was just amazing. She was so nice. So I wanted to come back. She gave us chances to get it right and she was great. She was easy to approach. She hoped in us. She believed in us. She's phenomenal. And that's why it was easy to learn from her. But the other guy that told me I was stupid, told me I couldn't do math, told me I wouldn't major in math, told me I couldn't understand calculus, told me, I mean, just, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And so the teacher is key. So we definitely have to keep that in mind. I like this. Even if elementary school, here's a comment, even if elementary school goes well, middle school and algebra can be damaging. Yes, but being made to feel that they can't do it. And it's crazy that some teachers want to perpetuate the eliteness of math. Exactly. I am of persuasion that everyone can do math if they have a great teacher. I really do feel that. And I hear the stories of people falling off by algebra. Like, oh, I used to like it, and then I got to algebra, and oh, I used to like it, and I got to trig, and oh, my pre-calculus, and they fall off because that teacher at that level. And so what's happening? Listen, some teachers feel like, oh, well, I'm a really good math teacher, but the personality is not as vibrant. And so then what's happening is students are unchecking. They're like, listen, I understand you're smart, but I've not had a connection with you. Like, you've not made the effort to connect with me. Therefore, I'm tuned out. Think about it. Think about your own experience. You've had a college lecture where the professor, you remember, you're like, oh my word, I got to get out of this classes. I just can't. It was just da 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 da, and they lost you. But then if somebody, did a song and dance, or they brought in a prop, or, they told a joke that was super funny to everybody, you remembered it and you were engaged. You were plugged in. And students are the same way. This isn't a college lecture. This is a classroom. A classroom is supposed to be alive and bright. Whatever it takes. I mean, I had a situation where I told my students, I said, if everybody passes this exam with 80 or higher, I'm going to do, I think I said I was going to do the moonwalk. And I played Michael Jackson. I did the moonwalk because they earned it. And then the principals and stuff are walking by like, what are you doing? Why are you doing the moonwalk? Well, because my kids earned it. You see what I mean? So we make it fun, whatever it takes for your students. And yes, Andrew was saying, we have all had an experience, yes, in life like this. We have to, I mean, come on, guys. Why do we go to college games? Because they're fun and exciting. Why do we go to the movies? They're fun and exciting. Why do we go to that friend's party that friend is super cool? Because it's fun and exciting. So then why would a kid want to come to your class? Because it's going to be fun and exciting. Yes, you can have a fun and exciting math class. So, one more. Okay, so yeah, everyone wants to say that kids today are different. Humans, no matter the era, don't engage when they don't connect with the topic or the teacher. And that's exactly right. We've got to just continue to do what we do and just brighten it up a little bit. Listen, I know you're like, gosh, but there's so much going on. I get it. But y'all listen, TikTok's not going away. Snapchat's not going away. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, They're not going away. So we have to adjust, or else we're going to be left behind because social media will take over. So let's keep going. So tip number 3, and this, I'm just big on this. We have to eliminate shame. We have to eliminate shame. So shame is the enemy of a student's math identity. Again, shame is the enemy of a student's math identity. So we've got to help students gain confidence by reassuring them in their ability to do math in the classroom. I want you to think about yourself and when you were learning a task, whether it was you were learning how to teach, you were learning how to ride a bike, you were learning how to drive. Can you imagine, for instance, let's take learning how to drive. You're learning how to drive down the road and you press the brakes too soon and somebody says, what are you doing? Oh my goodness. Like, don't you know you're not supposed to do that? You're just, you're just a waste of time right now. I'm sick of this. I don't want to put up with you. I don't want to put up. Do you think you want to learn to drive again? And how much shame do you feel? When you go home that night, you're going to be like, oh my word. You probably won't be able to sleep because you're having to juggle all these feelings. Well, then when a student is in our classes and you say, okay, what's 9 times 7? And they say 81. 81? Oh my God. You think they want to come back to your class? Or what are you doing? Didn't I tell you to put that up? Put that away. You know what? I am sick and tired of every time I look back there and you're playing with that device. How many times, what it's going to take for it to get through your head? Do you think they're going to want to come back? Probably not. These children are human. They're human first before they're math proficient. And we've got to adjust so that we can teach with love and compassion and empathy, realizing that why are they plugging out? Why are they on that device? Why are they hiding in my math class? It's deeper than the surface level of them being distracted and acting out. Something else is going on. They're probably ashamed. They probably don't feel like they can do it. So they're trying to hide through that device, trying to hide through conversation. So building that relationship with the students and getting to the root of the problem is key. You might have to have a parent meeting. You might have to pull them to the side and say, hey, listen, I know, you've been really distracted on devices and you've not really been doing your work. And, I see that you really care for my class. What's going on? And really have a heart to heart and take the moment to care and try to reach them again so that you can eliminate shame and help them to get back on the track, on the trajectory that they need to be. Continue to speak positively to your students. Pick them up when they're down. Pick them up when they're down. Okay. If they got a 38% in your test, they're down. So pick them up by saying, hey, listen, we all have bad days. It's okay. Let's get back in the ring. Let's try this again. And if we need to make something up, let's make it up. Let's see, how can I help you? How can I help you be successful in this class? Because at the end of the day, guys, if you as a teacher, if you don't help your students be successful, then you're not successful. Your success is dependent on your students. Never forget that. So help your students to not be so hard on themselves. Okay. Help them to have a gritty mindset, growth mindset. Help them to speak positively. I might have scored a 38, but I'm still learning, and I know that I will be able to grow in my knowledge, and I will score better next time. I'll understand the math better next time. And remember, you are only as good of a teacher as your weakest student. Again, you are only as good of a teacher as your weakest student. So you know how we rave about that gifted kid that always gets 102%? No. Relook at the grade book and start. I used to do this, and I hope that you guys can reflect. I used to reflect on my teaching because I really cared. Like I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and like, oh yeah, I'm a teacher, but I'm not really a teacher because nobody's passing. So I really would take my grade book and I would go through, okay, this one has a 90, this one has an 83, this one has a 77, this one has a 72, 65, 66, 50, 30. What's going on? And I would have to reevaluate. I can no longer use those. Well, so-and-so never comes to class, or so-and-so I've given him an opportunity. He never turns to this. No. I've got to do something else. I've got to do something different to get them up to par, to get them up to speed. And because I knew that at the end of the day, I was accountable for them. And I think that's what we have to do. takes more work, but we have to become more accountable for our students. So you're only as good of a teacher as your weakest student. And yeah, here's another one and another comment. And how much anxiety the next time you get in the car. Yeah, that anxiety is real. When you're trying to go to the class and you had a bad experience the day before, sometimes you don't want to even face that teacher. That calculus teacher I hated going to his class. Like, I dreaded it. It was horrible. If I knew to skip class, I probably would have, but I was such a goody two shoes. I didn't know that I could skip. But I think that I just would have rather skipped than to hear his voice or see his face. Because to me, he was disgusting. I'm speaking my heart because I think that this is what's helping all of us, right? We don't want to be that teacher that students are like, oh my God, I don't want to see them. I don't want to hear them. I'm sick of them. We don't want to be that person. And the way we do that is we eliminate shame and we help to build their math identity along the way. So let's keep going. The next step, tip number 4, we're going to implement restorative practices with our students. Restorative practices, they take away the punitive approach that leads to the school to prison pipeline, and it helps to remove barriers from, to a student's success. This is key. Now, you might think, oh, this is no big deal, but some school systems have school to prison pipelines set up in them, and they don't even realize that that's what's happening. And that's not what they intended to do, but that's exactly what's happening. Is you've got a higher juvenile rate. I challenge you to look up some of those numbers of students that are being suspended and thrown in prison before the age of 18. Because they couldn't get along with their teachers and they kept getting sent to the principal's office. So certain school districts have it to where if the students are suspended, I think it's like 3 times, they get like, after 3 times, they get OSS. Like, so the second time or whatever, they get like ISS in school suspension, and they get like ISS or OSS for the 4th suspension, and then they get OSS again. And if they get so many days, like I think like 5 days OSS, then they're expelled from school. That's how it was down in Florida, and some of our, Florida's special, but some of the things that we had going on in Florida is basically you could get a kid like completely removed from school by how you wrote the referral. And so I want to talk about this because so many times, especially in math class, kids are bored. Kids don't, I mean, come on, math versus gym. Everybody's going to want to throw a basketball. Not everybody's going to want to work an equation. So of course the student's going to have less energy towards the math and more energy towards goofing off and being silly in your class because it's not gym. So we have to come in to the education space, into our classroom, acknowledging that, and then not taking it personally when the students do act up and cut a fool, because we realize my math class is not gym, right? Yeah, I can only do the moonwalk so many times. At the end of the day, we got to start looking at equations. And so how do we handle restorative practices? I want to first talk about discipline. Okay. My last few years of being an educator, I did not write referrals. And when we were in our faculty meeting and they would say, okay, here's the discipline system, just in case you need to use it. This is how you write the referral. This is how you process it. This is how you call for administration. I literally would not pay attention. You know why? Because I didn't want to be that teacher. I didn't want to activate that. I didn't want to have to utilize that because I felt like, you know what, this is my classroom and it's my babies, and I will be able to develop a relationship with them to where they will trust me, and I know they'll be able to get it together. And so what I would do instead, I had a money system, and students in the money system, like if they, answered the question right, they get $20. If they helped a teammate, they got $40. If they, but if they said profane words, they owed me $160 on the spot. So the system worked both ways. So the students knew, like, okay, like, and if they got a referral, they owed me $400 in the money, in the fake money. But if they kept, if they had no tardies or whatever, and they had like perfect attendance, then they got $400. The system was very fair. And then they would get like a class, like behavior acknowledgement event, like a party or game day or whatever, after the class raised $1,000, and you could only contribute up to $200 per student to that account. So I know that was a lot, but I had a system, and I used this system for years, and that's why I'm able to call it off the top of my head, because it was so effective that the students, I didn't even need to call home really, because they wanted the money. They wanted to participate. And I created buy-in. We had a whole like money system contract that was really neat. If you guys want that, I can share that with you. And I found that there were many times, guys, listen, that I had to extend grace and mercy when I didn't want to, and when I was justified not to. Students would curse me out, and instead of writing them a referral, they just paid me 160 when they calmed down. And sometimes you got to look at that student real carefully and try to catch them in the eye contact, and see the pain as they're cursing you out or as they're yelling. What's going on at home? Are they getting beat by their parents? Are they living with a parent every other weekend? Did someone just die? Are they dealing with sickness? What are they really dealing with? To the point that they don't like you, that they would cross you and disrespect you like that. It's deeper than you. Believe me. You came to work, you came to do your job, came to teach, and then they're doing this. It's not you. It's something else. And sometimes we get so caught into the routine of, oh, wait, did you say that to me? I don't like your attitude, mister. You need to get out, go to the dean. But what we don't realize is, unfortunately, when we send them to the dean and we don't do restorative practices, we don't pull them outside to try to talk to them, but we don't try to mediate. We don't try to prevent like win-win solutions and give them mercy. It leads to school to prison pipeline. And it's sad because sometimes you look back on those students that you wrote 4, 5, 6 referrals on, and you'll see that this kid is now street driven. They're now for the streets. We lost them. And it was because they had that attitude, or they had dress code, or they wouldn't put the phone up. But was it really worth the fact now that they're in the streets? Because if you think it was worth it, I want you to think about the cost of crime, and the cost of students, and the cost of having a prisoner, someone in the jail, how much those cost you with your tax dollars. Because believe it or not, you're going to pay more for a person being in jail or prison through your tax dollars than you will if you gave them a scholarship for $20,000 for school. I'd rather stick with scholarships than to put them on a path of school to prison pipeline. And that's why we're talking about restorative practices. So again, some of those practices are money systems, mediation. If the kids are upset and they're rowling and they're about to fight or something, save the paperwork and do a mediation. Get both parents on the phone or guardians on the phone and figure out what's going on, tell them what's going on, and request a meeting and do a mediation between those students when they calm down. Remember, students are human, okay? And then presenting mercy, second and third and fourth chances. Sometimes they will have situations that are beyond your control. They might be getting back from ISS or whatever from another teacher's class, and they've got to be restored to the classroom environment. What you don't want to do is you don't want to make them feel like an isolated stranger on an island when they come back like, oh, so-and-so's back. Hi. Well, here's what we've done the last 3 days. No. Act like everything is normal. Act like it's the first day of school all over again. Hey, how's it going? How you doing? All right, listen. So yesterday we talked about this. Let me know what you need help with. I'm going to get you everything you need, and we're going to pick up right where we are. And if you feel like participating, go for it. And be vibrant, be excited to see them. Let them know it's okay. Let them know it's behind them. Let's keep moving forward. Restore them. Don't punish them. They're not coming to school with hopes of going to jail or going to juvie. They're coming to school because they want to graduate. And we promised them as educators that we would help them with that. So those are some things that we want to do for sure. Yes, Angie said I had a system too, but I like this so much better. I think if y'all ever want me to do a session where I talk about the money system and we really play that out, I would be honored to come back, because I promise y'all, I used it. I did not have to write referrals. And matter of fact, the administrators, the system helped the administration team, and the system was so effective at one school that they actually implemented it throughout the entire school, and they adapted it because it was so effective. It just really works when you give those students chances like that. So thanks for letting me share that part with you guys. Now let's talk about tip number 5. So we're talking about differentiated instruction. And when you have differentiated instruction, it helps with the structure of the class. It helps flow with metacognition. You could do things like the I do, you do, we do in your lesson planning. Like, I do this problem, I explain this, and then I'm going to have you do it. You're going to try some practice, and then we together, we're going to do some real world problems or whatnot. It's a great system that you can do for your students. And then, of course, backwards lesson planning, making sure that you're keeping the end in mind as you're unfolding the lesson, using Kagan instructions and Linda Kagan. If you don't know about that, please look that up. And then, of course, starting and ending with a standard for your students is key. Having a bell work where you're talking about the standards and then ending with an exit slip that also introduces the standards would really help your students. And then, of course, tip number 6, empowering student voice. So you are the catalyst for empowering students in your classroom. Again, you are the catalyst for empowering students. I know you thought it was going to come from the math or something else. I'm going to be honest. It's going to come from you. Why do you think people are booking Beyonce tickets? Why are they booking tickets to go see Steph Curry play in the NBA? Elon Musk, why are we looking at everything he tweets? It comes from them. They are the source of empowerment and entertainment. And just like they carry influence and power everywhere they go, you carry the same influence and power as a math teacher. So a lot of work to be done, huh? Because you are the catalyst for empowering student voice in your classroom. Whenever you see a student that is a wallflower, you have the power to change that. Instead of saying, oh, no, I'm not going to bother them. You know, they're quiet, they're good. And I already have so much on my plate. I just want to get through this lesson. Instead of doing that, challenge yourself to tap every voice in your class, tap every gender, and to tap every demographic. Even if you have to literally write out, okay, I called on an African-American female. Okay, I called on a Caucasian male. Okay, I called on a Hispanic female. Okay, I called on a Filipino male. Whatever you've got to do to make sure every type of voice in the class is heard, that's what you got to do. So some tips for creating or cultivating student voice, having a random selection of learners. So you could do popsicle sticks where you put their names on the sticks, and then you can call it, or you can have another student pull from that list of popsicle sticks. I used to keep them in like a little like ragu jar or whatever, like wash the jar out, of course, and then put their names in and then call. You could do a ticket system. You could do, I used to do, I don't know if it's Kagan or not, but I think it's Kagan. I used to label the desks. So I used to put the desks in groups of 4, or if it was a big table, I used to do it in the corners. And it used to be like A1, A2, A3, A4 for the first group, B1, B2, B2, or B3, B4 for the second group, C1, C2, C3, C4. And that would cover all the way up to like I's, because I used to have like at least 26 students or so. And then I would just say, okay, if you are A3, B1, G2, and F4, come up to the board and show me what you got. It was random selection. I didn't know where they all sat. And then the good part about that is that sometimes students would like move their seats and stuff. So when you call randomly, they can't escape you. So if your back is turned to them and you say, okay, I need I1, G2, C3, and D4 to come up to the board, it's fair game. And they would randomly come up. And that's one way that you can help with random selection of learners. Having group work via Kagan structures, you could look at round robin, you could look at some of the things that she does. There's also the red and yellow little talking chips, the little circular ones that I know that you know what I'm talking about. They have like red on one side and yellow on the other. You could do red for don't talk, and then yellow for the partner that gets the right to talk. And then you give them problem 1, red starts, problem 2, yellow starts, problem 3, and they go every other number, and they have to talk their ways through, as they're working on a worksheet together. And then, of course, complimenting your students as they're answering a problem correctly and explaining it correctly. Then you can compliment them and call them out. Hey, I want y'all to see what, student B4 is doing. They were explaining this, and I loved the words they used. I loved how they explained the operations. And, I just want to say, well done, guys. Let's go ahead and give them a hand. Like, literally, let's give them a hand. Yeah, we're going to compliment. I mean, make it to where the classroom environment, it's not a forced situation where it's like a forced compliment, but that you've done it so much that it is natural. I promise this works. It works. Trust me. So, with that said, to conclude, it's never too late to empower your students and to strengthen the student voice. So embrace growth mindset, use praise and constructive feedback, eliminate shame, continue to implement restorative practices, use differentiated instruction, and continue to enhance student voice. So with that said, I'm going to open up for questions and comments. And then there's the survey that you guys can scan right here in the corner. if you take your phones real quick and scan that, then you can give me some advice on this. And please do that so that I can keep in touch with you. My website is www.india-white.com. Again, that's www.india-white.com. It's up here. And if you're interested in anything, whether that's a grit workbook for teachers, grit workbook for students, you can find them on that website if you go to teacher educator resources. Okay. And hopefully I can see you guys at some future conferences, NCTM and CSM. And I know that we've got a couple more things that I'll be doing directly with you guys here in ICTM. So with that said, thank you so much for having me.